We'll go ahead
Join
and
you in 10 minutes.
Yeah. We'll go ahead and get started. Before the meeting, in order to hold the meeting remotely without an anchor site, I need to read this statement. It's about half a page long, so hang on, everybody. It is Tuesday, August 11th, and it is 12:33 p.m. This meeting will be conducted entirely via electronic means on August 4, 2020, in accordance with Utah Code 52-4-2074. I determined that conducting meetings of the Provo City Transportation and Mobility Advisory Committee with an anchor location, such as the Community Development Conference Room, presents a substantial risk to the health and safety of those who may be present there. These are the facts upon which I have made this determination. Utah has been in a declared state of emergency due to novel coronavirus disease since 2019, since March 6, 2020, a disease outbreak which the World Health Organization has characterized as a pandemic. The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention state that COVID-19 is easily spread from person to person between people who are in close contact with one another. The spreads through respiratory droplets when an infected person coughs, sneezes, or talks, and it may be spread by people who are non-symptomatic. Federal, state, and local authorities have recommended that individuals limit public gatherings, wear face masks, and follow social distancing guidelines. The individuals exposed to persons experiencing symptoms of COVID-19 self-quarantine for 14 days, and the individuals experiencing symptoms of COVID-19 self-isolate to prevent and control the continuing spread of COVID-19. Notwithstanding that Utah generally and Utah County specifically have been moved to the low-risk yellow phase, reported COVID-19 cases in Utah County have more than doubled since May 31, 2020. Physical distancing measures will be difficult to set up and maintain in the Community Development Conference Room. The meeting will be available to the public for live broadcast and on-demand viewing at youtube.com/user/Provo channel 17. Okay.
Sorry, Clancy. This is Crystal. James is just going to be a few minutes late, but he is listening on the phone. He just can't talk. So
okay. Perfect. Thanks for letting us know.
Yep.
Let's quickly just introduce TMAC members. So I'm Clancy Black, TMAC Chair. Joy.
Joy McMurray, TMAC Vice Chair.
Yeah, I think so. And Dr. Saito. You want to introduce yourself, Dr. Saito, or I can go ahead?
I'm a retired professor, but I've been a TMAC member for many years.
Thanks. And Stephen?
Stephen Mongi, TMAC member.
All right. And we've got Jim Hamla on the phone joining us shortly. We'll also welcome all the staff on the meeting and other guests joining us. And Dave Graves, welcome. If what I've heard is correct, this might be your last meeting with us.
That's kind of the way it's planned right now. So it's been really good, and I've appreciated the work that the TMAC committee has done.
Thank you. You've been great to work with, and we appreciate what you've done for the city. We'll miss you. And we know we're in good hands as well. So thank you for both. All right. Well, let's go ahead with agenda item 1 then, grade separated study. Is this you, Vern?
Yes, Clancy, this is me, and also my colleague Christian Kirkham. We're both with Parametrics, and we'll be presenting on the Union Pacific Railroad crossing study that we're doing for Provo City. I'm going to attempt to share my screen, and Robert, you're going to allow me to do that, I'm assuming?
Yeah, Crystal is.
Oh, Crystal is. Okay, thank you. You let me know if I'm sharing, and once we start sharing, I can begin. I'm just putting down sharing for all panelists. Hopefully this is going to work here now. Okay. Everybody see that?
Yep.
Yeah, we see the PDF.
Okay. So we started this study a while back ago, to be quite honest with you, about a year ago. And one of the biggest things for this study is to obtain data. And railroads are extremely secretive in providing any data. In fact, they won't provide data. So you got to get creative in how you're going to obtain that data. We were able to actually obtain crossing data information with a camera that we had posted at the railroad crossings at Freedom Boulevard. And here's our outline for the day. We're going to talk about railroad crossing activations by train type. We're going to talk about bike and pedestrian crossings as well. The sheer number of those is pretty phenomenal. Safety data. We're going to talk about EMS routing impacts. We're going to talk about the future pedestrian bridge. And then we're going to show you existing conditions and alternatives. And then we're going to show you how we're going to reach out to the public for our second public involvement meeting. We held our first one in January, but that was pre-COVID. All the data that we're showing you is pre-COVID. We expect things to return back to normal conditions in the future. It may not be in the near future, but it will return. So what we're going to do here is turn the time over to Christian Kirkham to talk about the next 6 slides.
Great, thank you, Vern. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Christian. I'm a planner with Parametrics. I do a lot of GIS analysis. My role on this project was to analyze the observational data at this particular crossing. So we were looking at Freedom Boulevard and roughly 600 South, right at the railroad crossing. Over the course of a little less than a week, but we did it at 2 different months. So one set of observations was in August 2019. So that was right before school was in session. And then the second one was in September 2019, right after BYU had started. And we wanted to capture both before and after. Obviously, there's different traffic and pedestrian patterns that emerge once school has started. So this first slide we're looking at, we tallied up the number of railway activations. So this is when the crossing arms come down. We wanted to get a sense of how many times a day, on average, those crossings were activated. And the pie chart you see on your left, in the blue, you can see that the UTA, those are the front runner trains, take up the vast majority of number of activations. So front runner crosses frequently during the day. Next up was the freight trains, and then Amtrak passenger rail made up the smallest percentage. You can see on the bar chart on the right, we looked at August 2nd through the 25th. The 22nd was a Thursday, I believe. So you can see Thursday and Friday, the number of UTA crossings were quite high, and then it dipped down on the weekend. And the freight trains were not as affected for weekend versus weekday activations, and Amtrak also not very affected, but some activations over the weekend. On average in August, over those 4 days, we saw about 40 activations for front runner per day. Amtrak only had about 2, and freight just under 12 per day. Go ahead, Vern.
Christian, this is
Yep.
Robert. Can I ask a quick question?
Sure.
You were collecting data 24 hours a day, correct?
Right. Yep.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, so if this is September, you can see the breakdown is very similar as far as which type of train was activating the most. UTA front runner by far the most. Our study period in September started on a Wednesday, the 4th. That was the day after school began. And then you can see on the bar chart, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, quite a few number of activations, and then it dips. And on Sunday, the 8th, there are very few activations. Obviously, front runner doesn't run on Sunday, so not going to see much there. But very similar breakdown as far as numbers. I don't think the scheduling changes very much. Just a slight increase after school had began. All right, go ahead. Okay, now this shows a different picture. This is the amount of time that is active. Those arms are down by train type. So we saw front runner was frequent, but they were pretty brief. You get the front runner train that crosses are fairly short trains, and then they're done. However, if we look at the amount of time that those arms are being activated, freight now comes into the picture as the longest. I mean, it makes sense. Freight trains are typically much longer. And so on average, freight trains would activate those arms for about 5 to 6 minutes per day, compared to Amtrak is the next longest at around 3 minutes. Then front runner is just about a minute. So a different picture as far as the amount of time, and that becomes important when we think about traffic patterns, when those freight trains are running, and how long it might be before someone decides to give up and take a different route if their path is blocked. Great, go ahead. And you can see here in September, very similar times. The freight train by far takes up the majority, and we saw a few spikes, a few anomalies where in the late hours, freight trains would sometimes park and block that crossing for several minutes to even hours. And so that's why we looked at the 75th percentile of our data, because there were a few outliers where trains were parked for a long period of time. Okay, continue on. Okay, another important part of the equation is pedestrian and bicyclist traffic. And so we looked at, using that same camera, same observational periods, we looked at number of passengers roughly going to and from the train platform, crossing those crossing arms, and bicyclists. And it was really no surprise that pedestrians far outnumber the cyclists. We also counted electronic scooters and skateboarders and people using other modes of transportation. Roughly a third more pedestrians were observed than those cycling. We observed the peak hours where the largest number of people were crossing, and during the weekday, those tended to be the afternoon, the PM peaks of 5 to 6 p.m. And then on the weekends, that would change from early afternoon to, we see on the 25th, afternoon seemed to be the peak on that Sunday. Or Saturday, I think that was. Keep going, Fern.
Christian, could we go back for just a second?
Sure, yeah. Yeah, please
So-
stop me with any questions.
This average number of crossings pie chart, that's daily crossings then?
Right.
Okay, and then the second table on the right, I just want to make sure I'm interpreting this right. So it looks like in this peak hour, there's actually a lot more bikes and e-scooters. The total bikes and e-scooters is lower, but in the peak hour, it's quite a bit higher. So,
Yeah.
I mean, I'm seeing that thinking people are likely commuting with bikes and e-scooters, whereas PEDs, it's consistent throughout the day is kind of how I'm interpreting that. Would you
Yep.
see it the same way, or?
Definitely. Yeah. Good. Glad you pointed that out. That is where it basically flips and we see more people commuting that way. And that makes sense as well.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah. After school was in session, the numbers increase, but the breakdown relatively stays the same. You can see September 4th through the 6th, that's during the week. The peak hour was always 5 to 6 p.m. And then that changes a little bit over the weekend. But we can expect the peak hour for weekday pedestrian and bicyclist traffic to be that afternoon peak. I think that's it. Want to go ahead one more, Vern? Yeah, I think this was your
Thank you, Christian. Appreciate your presentation of those 6 slides. Now we're going to talk a little bit about safety. This is our project area, roughly from 3rd South to 920 South, from University Avenue over to about 9th West. So what this is a heat map of a concentration of crashes. It's really not a big surprise that you're going to see some of those on University Avenue, some of the other ones on the state routes, 3rd South, University Avenue. Freedom has a fair amount as well, especially when it intersects with 3rd. Notice the railroad crossings though. You got 200, which is Freedom, 500, 700, and 900. What's interesting to notice there is that they're low volume crashes, low speed crashes, usually front to rear. Someone's not paying attention as they come up on the lights and gates, or someone's already stopped there. So this does not include vehicle train collisions or train pedestrian collisions. That's a different story altogether. But you'll see that our crash severity in the area is pretty low, in the sense that we have a lot of no injury crashes. We have some minor. We have a fatal. In fact, you'll see on the next couple slides, we had a fatal bicyclist one as well. You know, that's just, it's tragic to these fatalities in an area, just tragic, because you know they spread throughout the community and people know the person, and it's you know it's just not a number, and I think that's what we need to understand. We took the crash rate in the area and compared it from the study area to Provo City and Utah County in general. It's not a surprise that in the study area with 2 major or 3 major streets like 3rd South and University Avenue and then Freedom Boulevard, that we might have just a hair higher crash rate in comparison to the overall city or overall county. Here's our fatal and serious injury crashes. I'm going to use my mouse down here on 920 South, and I'm circling the red one there. That was a bicyclist fatality and incident. I don't know the particulars on that. Here's you can see the bike ped crashes. This was all crashes, or all fatal and serious injury crashes for the 3 years. And then here's the bike ped crashes only. You know, this helps the city and helps us to start to take a look at, well, there's not a lot of crashes at the crossings per se, but we got a lot of crashes when it comes to bike ped at intersections, right? Intersections is usually the key, and there's just so much going on at the intersections. You know, we continually ask ourselves, what is a better design? What is causing? What is the root of these incidents? And a lot of times, as Clancy, you would know that 94 or 96% of all collisions are due to driver error, not roadway design. So it's unfortunate, but what can we do to make or to design things safer, to force people, if you will, to pay attention? And it's hard. Front runner and railroads try to do that with the maze before you cross the crossing, and we get them walking each direction down the track, but they're not looking down the tracks, they're looking down at their phone. So that's our safety information. Any comments or questions on safety before we move on to emergency service routing? Okay. We picked 2 locations to look at emergency service responses and routing to those areas. We picked Franklin Elementary School, which is located north of the railroad corridor, and then we selected Franklin Park, which is a lot of activity goes along at Franklin Park. There's a lot of soccer fields there, a couple of soccer fields, and other activity, and that's south of the railroad corridor. So we wanted to provide an instance, a sample, if you will, of response times to both of those locations to get an idea of the impact of activations. So the red lines that you're going to see are the ones that have an activation that has occurred, and the blue line is their normal their normal route to it, and there's no activation occurring. We spoke with all 5 fire and rescue stations and interviewed firefighters on that particular shift, and really got some great information from them. Fire Station 4 is the primary response fire station for this locale, which was a little bit surprising to me, considering it's east of I-15. Okay, but that's what it is. And then Fire Station 5, which is, Fire Station 4 is located at 2050 West, and it's just south of Center Street, and so that's the extension of Geneva Road is 2050 West, if you know that area. And then Fire Station 5 is over there just off of 3rd South, and I think it's 9th East or 7th East. I think it's 7th East, actually. And they were really helpful in providing a lot of information to us, but they're the backup station, number 5 is. And so if they have to respond and they have to go around, they go up and over the overpass if there's an activation, and they have to kind of meander themselves to the call for Franklin Park. Franklin Elementary, of course, is very easy to access. We also looked at Station 1, which is up right where Robert is sitting, and stations 2 and 3. Stations 2 is up there on Canyon Road, and Station 3 is up there just off of Columbia Lane. And we looked at response times for all these. And at the end of the day, when there's an activation, you could see stations prolonged in their timing to respond to a call anywhere from 30 seconds to 5.5 minutes longer. So that's pretty important when you're dealing with minutes, and you say it's 3 or 4 or 5.5 minutes longer for a ambulance or a fire truck to respond to an incident. So that's kind of impactful in my mind on these activations. Pretty impactful, actually. So in all, when we take a look at Franklin Elementary, we know that stations 4 and 5 are the primary, and 5 is the backup. The 3 can actually get there faster depending on traffic signals and whatnot. We did a comparison of 5 p.m. and 5 a.m., right? 5 a.m. is kind of the free flow traffic conditions where you really don't have much backup at all, and you can get there. And then 5 p.m. is peak hour traffic, of course. So Franklin Elementary is one of those that is not a huge concern. just because we have additional fire stations on the north and activations don't affect them as much. Franklin Park, on the other hand, and I'll just say this, the boulders, okay? The boulders get a lot of emergency response calls, whether it's police or ambulance or whatever the case may be. And you can see that detours can take, 2/3 of a mile and on average 2.5 minutes longer, almost 3 minutes longer, depending on the station. So like I said, backup from the stations 1, 2, and 3, and 5 are delayed anywhere from 2.5 to 5.5 minutes, depending on, the routes that they take. But, the routes that most of them take, we were able to clarify, we were able to compare the no congestion with the congestion, and that's how we came up with this delay. Any comments on the routing impact results?
I have a question.
Sure.
So will they take the primary route and then turn around if there's an activation, or do they take the secondary route?
Okay, so that's a really good question, Clancy. Stations 1, 2, 3, and 5 will make that determination if they have to go south of the tracks, even if they see a train or not. Usually they'll take the overpass because it's faster. Okay. However, I spoke with a lot of people in the firefighters, and they said if they're in their personal vehicles, if it's a red, white, and blue train, meaning it's front runner, they know they're going to be okay. They don't mind taking that route. But if it's one of those big freight trains, long freight trains, they know they're going to detour. Okay. And so that's usually what happens. Fire Station 4, our recommendations out of this, and we know we're not experts in emergency response vehicles. I'm sure that emergency response vehicles, it's kind of a wash compared to a regular vehicle in timing, because they're bigger and they're heavier, but they have these sirens and lights. And so sometimes they have a little bit of priority, either at a signal or at an intersection, provided that people like you and me pull over for them and let them through. So it's kind of a wash in that regard. But one of the things that came out of this that we're sharing with the city is they may want to consider looking at a small realignment of the area for that little part of Franklin and the boulders. Instead of having Station 4 be the primary, maybe Station 5 might want to be the primary and Station 4 the backup. So does that answer it, Clancy?
Yeah, thanks, Vern.
Thanks.
I have a question, Vern. Sorry.
Sure.
Did you say, do the firefighters have a way of knowing when there is an activation happening? Do they have a camera there? Or they don't know until they show up?
Yeah, you're correct. They don't know until they show up.
Okay.
Yeah. They have no idea if a train's going to be blocking their crossing right when they're called out. Yep.
Okay, thank you.
So one of the things that we've seen, and you'll see this from the video that we're going to show you, depending on how long you want to listen to us and watch the video, but the Provo Central Station Bridge is something that we need yesterday, right? It's something that is needed now for pedestrians and bicyclists and ADA and all that fun stuff. We believe that there's justification for pedestrian access over the railroad crossing to access not only the front runner train, but also the buses, the different bus routes, and of course BRT with UVX there. All that is important to access. And here's what a concept might look like. It kind of lines up, if you will, right on the east side of 100 West Street. It comes down, the landing is just right there across the platform, and right there where the circular occurs, where the buses pull in. So that would be a conceptual UTA has a couple of these. One is very similar to this that's up there in Farmington, and that is an overstructure like this one. UTA also has a concrete structure at Thanksgiving Point that goes under the tracks. And so in this case, we would be recommending and obviously an overpass to get to this central station.
So Vern, let me follow up with that one.
Yes.
That is actually under design right now. It is funded. So it will, as soon as we finish design, it'll move forward on construction. So over the next year and a half, that will finish design and get construction moving forward. So that is happening and moving forward.
And if I remember correctly, Shane, some of the data from this analysis was used to obtain some grant funding to fund the remainder of this bridge.
Yes, we did have a shortfall, and we did get some additional funds from our CDBG funds. Absolutely. Yep.
Great. Thank you, Shane, for that update. Any questions on the Central Bridge, Provo Central Station Bridge?
So, Shane, is the design, does it generally match what we're seeing here?
Yes, it does. One of the issues is the size of the structure that's on that's going to be along, what is that, 6 South? Initially we tried to have that pushed as far west and kind of line up with 100 West, but based on how that's may fit in there, that may end up pushing a little bit farther east in order for that structure to fit in the current right of way and the necessary separation from the railroad. So they're in that process of finalizing that location, but it's looking like it's going to be probably a little bit more east of this. And we're also looking at making the bridge structure. There is a development that's going on, the Mill Creek, the Mill Race development we're designing that structure so that they can bring that structure potentially across 6 South over to the north side there and tie that in. So that's being allowed in that design, but I know there was times that we thought were to bring that all the way across 6 South. We're allowing that for the future, but right now it's going to be look something similar to this.
If I could just offer one comment, depending on where that north tower, I'll call it, ends up, it'll be important to make sure we have some crossing amenities on 6 South so that someone on the north side of 6 South can easily cross. Neither of those intersections to the east or west have any pedestrian crossing features.
Yes.
So having something there would be
yes, and I think that's something that we will work into that as well, those improvements. If you recall back on 100 West has been designated. We have a different typical section for 100 West all the way from 6 South up to where's that, 2nd North up by New Skin. That is kind of designated as a pedestrian bicycle corridor. So we'll be working with the state on improvements, across 300 South, those things too. So yes, those will be not only here, but all along that entire 100 West corridor. We're going to be looking at those kind of features.
Excellent. Thanks.
Yeah, it's, this is the minimum standard is to connect here. If there's a potential for public-private partnership and development where we can get that across 6 South, that's just one more facility that a bike or pedestrian or access doesn't have to cross. So great separation. If it landed on the north side, that would be awesome and ideal. But there's added expense to that. Okay, moving on.
Vern,
Yes.
sorry, one more question. As I'm looking at that, I'm not as familiar with all these transportation things as Clancy and Shane are. As I'm looking at that bridge, is it intended that a biker could bike across that, or they're going to get off of their bike and walk it up the ramp and across and walk it down the ramp?
Yeah, more than likely they'll be in what is called a freight elevator on both sides.
Okay.
And it's an oversized elevator that bicyclists can take over. We don't because of the rail yard itself and the constraints there, there is probably not enough, and Shane can correct me on this, but our conceptual design does not account for a bicyclist being able to ride across the bridge. It would be, a bicyclist would be using the freight elevator to take their bike up, go across, and go down.
Okay.
Correct.
But those ramps. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
It'd be the same if you've been to Farmington, Farmington Station. It's very similar to that. It is the freight elevator. You walk across the bridge structure, then you take the freight elevator back down.
And in the stations like Farmington, where they've put in active transportation bridges like this, do they get good use, or do people bypass it and go on the streets where they used to go? I'm just curious if a biker would use that, or if they would just take their chances and cross on the street as they would used to.
Well, Farmington, they have a captive audience. There is no other way to get across the tracks.
I can tell you.
Yeah, go ahead.
I can tell you, Vern's going to probably show you some pictures or here as you continue along in this presentation of some very frustrated people. So I would tell you, yes, it probably absolutely will get used, especially the TOD, the transit development that's planned for this entire area, and these developments that are happening, I think, are only going to increase that usage. Absolutely. And then as we can get 100 West developed into that pedestrian, bicycle corridor, I think absolutely it definitely will get used.
Thank you.
Yeah, and they have the stairs option too for those that like more exercise than the rest of us. There's the stairs option instead of the elevator option.
And the elevator presumably is also ADA accessible, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
It would need to be. Yeah. Okay. Moving on to alternatives. What we looked at is 3 alternatives. We looked at a grade separated crossing at 500 West and at grade at Freedom Boulevard. And then we switched those around for alternative 2. We looked at it at grade at 500 West with a grade separation at Freedom. And then finally alternative 3, which is what is consistent with the Mountain Land Association of Governments Long Range Regional Transportation Plan, is grade separated at both Freedom Boulevard and 500 West. So I'm just going to briefly go and show you the conditions that we see when taking a look. We flew a drone. We're going to show you a video of that here in a minute. But all our VSIM analysis, which is really travel modeling in a very specific area, we created our VSIM model to project and calibrate our models with existing and then 2050. And so here's what happens existing. You guys know this. You live in Provo. You know what happens when there's an extended freight crossing. By the way, the average is 7.5 minutes. Okay. So a lot of this data that we're going to show you for an average freight train is 7.5 minutes. Trains are getting longer, not shorter. The frequency is staying about the same. It might be a hair less, 1 or 2 fewer trains per day. But Union Pacific, there are 3 freight trains that cross this track. Union Pacific Railroad, who owns the right of way. You have BNSF Railway, who has trackage rights on the crossing. They have just 2 trains a day. And then you have Utah Railway, which you'll see as Genesee and Wyoming. Those trains are probably up to 4 a day. And then the rest are Union Pacific, totaling somewhere between 12 and 16 trains a day. So you get a 1 7.5 minute closure for Union Pacific freight crossing during PM peak hour. The intersections at 400 South and University and 500 South and University just don't operate well at all. They're E and F. 500 South, we'll see long queues on the side streets trying to make a right-hand turn. Same thing with 400. And then 920, we see backups all past the entrance to the intermodal center there, and those left turns are a big deal. from 920 South onto University Avenue to get across. So, by the way, every alternative keeps a grade separated crossing at University Avenue. Now, there could be a new structure in 5 years or 10 or 20. It's been on the plan for 30 plus years. But once they rebuild that, we anticipate still having a structure on University Avenue. Okay. The UTA frontrunner closures, they aren't a big deal, and people will wait when they see the red, white, and blue train. Rarely will they, unless there's a freight train at the same time, which does happen frequently, they'll wait. They know it's only going to be 1 to 2 minutes, and it doesn't pay them any dividends to divert over 2 blocks to the east, go over, and then divert to where their route was. So alternative 1, where what we see is 500 West flows pretty freely, obviously with a grade crossing there. We have fewer backups on 4th and 5th because now the drivers of Freedom Boulevard have an opportunity to go east or west to access a railroad grade separated crossing. And then the queues on 920 South, there's some queues that remain, but not as bad. And so that Freedom Boulevard's not quite as bad, but they are diverting to both 5th and University Avenue still. On alternative 2, you get our typical stuff on UTA frontrunner, but when we experience a freight crossing, traffic's of course going to be smooth over Freedom Boulevard because we got the grade separation there. But then what we experience is kind of just push the bubble. We're experiencing delays on 500 South from 500 West, trying to get over to Freedom Boulevard. And you'll see some of this in the video as well. And then of course, alternative 3, there's no delays, right? There's just no delays because we got grade separated at University, we got a grade separated at Freedom, we got a grade separated at 500 West, and of course all these would have the current design of the bike ped bridge to the station as well. So here's the real big story on this. MAG has their grade separated crossings both in phase 1 of the regional transportation plan. The outcome of this study is A, we confirm through our analysis that grade separations in the Mountainland RTP is needed. However, there's an order, and we're probably recommending a little bit different timing for the second one. So let me just walk you through this. Existing conditions. Now, this is just for 1 hour, PM peak hour. And let's say we have a Union Pacific freight train that goes by and they take 7.5 minutes. We're going to see a detour of 164 vehicles. This is today. Okay. And they're going to detour 109 miles out of their way. And the 4.5 hours of additional travel time. Now, these are real numbers that you can put, a money to, and air quality issues and all types of other things that you could go in further detail with. If we do nothing by 2050, that number of detoured vehicles is going to increase to 251. We're going to have 181 miles of out of direction travel. And we're going to have a full 8 hours of delay just in that 1 hour of peak hour travel time. If we build 500 West, which is what our recommendation is we confirm that MAG's long range transportation RTP plan has the 500 West in the correct time frame, phase 1. And that is you would have fewer vehicles detoured, less out of distance miles traveled, and your time of out of travel time is 1.5 hours instead of 4 or 8. That's pretty significant. Alternative 2, where you have the Freedom Boulevard, It doesn't get as much bang for your buck if that was the standalone. 164, still you're going to have a lot of detours, mostly from 500 west. Okay. Now, I will say one thing about the RTP. MAG's RTP has 500 west from 3rd South all the way down to Lakeshore Parkway. I'm sorry, it's not Lakeshore. What is it called?
Lakeview.
Lakeview Parkway. And then it also connects all the way down to Spanish Fork Main Street, right? And so they see that as a major north-south facility at some point in time. Provo's recently adopted transportation master plan does not show a road going south of Lakeview Parkway, and it maintains a smaller cross section of 3 lanes instead of 5 lanes from about the railroad crossing down to Lakeview Parkway. Shane, Dave, did I say that correctly? I don't want to say anything incorrect here.
Nope, that is correct.
Okay. And so we modeled it as Provo's transportation master plan. Okay. So even with the smaller facility south of the railroad tracks, we're still going to need a grade separation on 500 west in phase 1. Now they have phase 1 also for Freedom Boulevard. What we're going to say about that is that it is probably more than likely going to fall in the late phase 2 or early phase 3 category. However, once the new grade separation at 500 west is completed, then would be the time to, after new travel patterns are established, that would be the time to do a study that determines the correct timing on the Freedom Boulevard grade separation. But we still believe it's somewhere in late 2, early 3. I think that can be more defined once the construction of 500 west is done. Alternative 3, bliss, right? No detoured vehicles, free flow traffic conditions for the most part. You don't care what the railroad's doing because they're not blocking your way. Better response times, obviously, and the whole bit. So with that, I can take a couple questions, but I know what you really want to see is the video, right?
Right.
So what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring up a video and I'm going to show you this. This is what we're going to public with. Can you still see my screen?
Yep.
Okay, you should see what is called the Provo Railroad Crossing Open House. It's a story. And so in January 30th, we were able to hold an in-person meeting citywide and get people's thoughts about the study. And so what we have here is we have an introduction to the study.
Vern,
Yes.
Vern, we see page 25 of your PDF still. Did you change to something else?
Oh, yes, I changed it. Hang on. Let's see how we can get this one up. I'm going to share a different screen. How's that work?
Yeah, that's great.
Okay. So this is what because of COVID, we need to go back out to the public. We want to go back out to the public and show them our findings. And this is how we're wanting to do that, is we have a link that we're going to place on the Provo City website. We're going to work with the mayor's office and we're going to work with department heads to kind of promote this and get this out. We'll put it on the Public Works Engineering Division webpage as well. And this will go through the study. So it has introduction, it has existing conditions, which is what I'd like to get to. Now, you're going to see a picture here. On this particular day, you see this motorcyclist parked his motorcycle. You see a bicyclist over here. What you don't see behind this car is about 2 or 3 people sitting down at this island. They missed their 5 o'clock train and they missed their 5:30 train.
Mm.
Now, I was in a hard hat and a vest, and they thought I was with the railroad, so they came over and they were loaded for bear, right? And they came over and talked to me, and I said, no, I'm not with the railroad, but that's what we're looking at right now. And this guy was a New Skin employee, very well dressed, and he says, I take the train every day. And once a week, this happens to me where I miss a train, at least once a week. He's commuting from the north down to Provo, and then he just walks up to his office, which is awesome, right? We want more of that. But when transit is unreliable, then people get impatient and they go back and go back to their automobiles or other methods. So I wanted to point that out to you. Let me go ahead and show. Oops. Let me go ahead and show this part right here, and I'm going to pull this aside, and I'm going to blow this up. I'm going to try to walk you through a little bit of this. This is a freight train that has just gone by. We got drone footage video here. You can see it's backed up to 1.5 blocks on Freedom Boulevard to the north. These are southbound vehicles. You're seeing this, right? Notice 4th and 5th South. Notice there's a full block backup on both of those, trying to make a right turn onto University Avenue. So this is a railroad crossing delay, and then take a look at northbound on Freedom Boulevard, where we have all these vehicles here, waiting to go northbound. And it's blocked up, it's backed up 1.25 blocks. So it's not uncommon for us to see a multiple activation event where we have a freight train and a UTA vehicle. Here's the guys sitting over there on the islands who have missed their trains. It's frustrating because the only detour they have is to walk all the way over to University Avenue, take the viaduct. They would walk about 6 blocks out of their way. These are not short blocks either. 6 blocks out of their way just to get back to where they need to be. Now you're going to see some people see the train and they're making U-turns. So they're making maneuvers that could result in accidents. This poor bus sat there for 30 minutes that day. They have no option. They're not going to be able to back up. They need to stay on route. And that poor bus sat there for 30 minutes during this railroad crossing detour on this particular day. We went down 2 or 3 different times and took drone footage of video. And I have some contacts with the railroad. And so they would tell me when they had some trains leaving that afternoon, and we'd go down there and do the drone footage. Again, showing this, it's a little slow here, but I'm not going to show you the whole 9-minute video. You'll be able to get onto this and go look at it. See, there's a car doing a U-turn. Most of these cars eventually turn around because it's just so long a wait.
You see a lot of cars on the north side there using the 2-way left turn lane to go past the queue to their access as well.
Yeah.
That last video. Yeah,
they do. And they know, right? They know because they live off of 5th West. And so accessing those apartments there along the south side of the tracks is they're very accustomed to doing that. So what I'd like to get to is seeing us, here's 920. Take a look at 920 east to the left of the roundabout. See how far that left turn lane is backed up? Now we sped up the video just a little bit. So this is what happens when the train traffic, and they're operating on a new operating system, a new concept called precision scheduled railroading. And this concept's been around in other railroads for many years. Union Pacific implemented it about 1.5 to 2 years ago. What it really is instead of concentrating on moving trains, they're concentrating on moving rail cars. And what that details them to do is to switch on the main line. You have 2 main lines in Provo, Main 1 and Main 2, not to mention Utah Transit Authority's front runner line. Now here's the travel model that we built with Visum. And I'm just going to show you a little bit of this just because you can kind of see our model and how it works. We based our model off of existing drone footage conditions on different events. So if it was a shorter event, like 7.5 minutes, or if it was a longer event, like, we saw trains blocking the crossing 30, 45, an hour and 15 minutes during either August or September when we did this. Notice the left turns onto University Avenue from 920 South, going up over the overpass. We're going to come back down, work ourselves over to Freedom Boulevard. We get a lot of left turns onto that, right? 5th and 4th, or at least if they can make it. Sometimes it's pretty challenging. Here's Freedom Boulevard as they come down. And so this is our model that we built. You can see front runner there. And now you see a Union Pacific train that is going to activate the crossing. And what we're going to experience is just what you saw in the drone video. Bikes and pedestrians will often walk up right to the automatic gates and to the stop line. Unfortunately, if they're on the south side of the tracks, they don't wait a lot of times. They'll go ahead and go up past the first 2 tracks and wait, and that's a really dangerous behavior because we could have 2 front runner trains, one leaving and one coming in at the same time, and they're technically in the crossing and they shouldn't be. But we see that observed real footage that occurred with the drone videos. Here we are over at 500 West. You're seeing the backup starting to occur on a regular 7.5 minute freight train. I know it's a little slow. So I'll end there. You can watch these at your own leisure. Let me go back and minimize this now and kind of get back. Oh, this is actually be a good part. Am I still sharing?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, watch this. See the pedestrians there on the south side? That's realistically what happens. Here we go. As soon as the train passes, they go instead of waiting until the lights completely stop flashing and the automatic gates come up. Now that they're coming up, the traffic again begins to move. Okay, well, I'll stop sharing here. That's our presentation. We're happy to answer any questions. Sorry it was longer. I mean, yeah, it was really long. Apologize about that.
Do you have a future model? I mean, assuming, let's say, those 2 bridges are completed. Have you made the simulation for those cases?
Yes, for alternative 1, 2, and 3, they're also on there.
Okay.
Let me show you. See, I stopped sharing real quick. Let me share screen and I'll go back to this. And let me exit out of this part to show you the rest of the website. So there's safety, you can see that, the emergency service routing. And here's where number 5, Mitsu, you can scroll down and see all the alternatives 1, 2, and 3 and what it does, okay?
Great, thanks.
Here's the Provo Central Station. Here's another look at it. And I think we actually provided some information and another graphic from the other side, if you will. And you kind of see how that looks. Again, conceptual, but kind of gives you a sky view orientation. As Shane said, the actual design, because of the railroad property and the right-of-way, might shift a little bit to the east. And then what we heard from the first public open house, there's the comments for you to read. And then you can go in and provide public comment yourself right here. So this is kind of how we do public outreach in COVID era.
That's great. Thank you. So is that the next step that'll be provided to the public?
Yes. Yep. Wanted to show you guys first. We just finished that website this week for the story map. Just showed it to Dave and to Shane and David last week, working through a couple of comments, and yeah, it's about ready to go.
Okay. Well, we appreciate it. Any other questions or comments before we move on? Okay. Well, thank you, Vern. We appreciate that. Look
Thanks,
forward
Clancy.
to the additional comments in the open house. Let's go ahead and move to item 2, and we'll try to spend only about 15 minutes here on item 2 to keep it moving along. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Let's see. There we go. Do you all see this PDF with the spreadsheet in the background? Do you see the whole screen?
Yes.
Okay, cool. So for item 2, we're discussing our active transportation project prioritization. We've been working on this slowly for a few months and hope to make a little more progress today. As a review, our goal is to look at the phase 1B and the phase 2B active transportation projects. The B part represents the fact that these are essentially unfunded. They're not associated with an already funded project. And our goal is to prioritize these and provide those recommendations to both council and engineering public works so that there's a clear understanding of what the priorities are for acquiring additional funding or using additional funding on these projects. So what we had discussed in previous meetings was some draft qualitative measures to evaluate these. And what we're going to do today is walk through a few of these projects and kind of try out these categories that we developed and see if they work, essentially. And whatever we learn from today's meeting, we'll adjust these criteria and go about it again until we're comfortable, and then we'll go through the entire list and rank the full set of projects. That makes sense? Any questions from anyone before we kind of dive in? All right. So kind of got split screen here. Hopefully y'all can see it well enough. This first project, 1390 North, Geneva Road to 2770 West. So this is, well, I'll just do Google Maps. So this is right here. Let me back up to orient everyone. So Provo High is right here. Center Street interchange down here. This is Geneva Road.
Clancy, I'm not seeing a map, Clancy.
Oh, what are you seeing right now?
I'm seeing the file we were looking at before.
I'm trying to share the entire screen. It's making me pick just one window.
Clancy, are you using a dual monitor?
Yeah.
Oh, that's why.
It doesn't like that?
No.
Okay. So, let's see. We'll have to do it this way. Okay, let me try again. Okay, do you see Google Maps now?
Yes.
Yes.
And then if I switch, do you see this spreadsheet?
Yes.
Okay, we'll have to do it this way. Sorry, so first project is 1390 North near Geneva Road here. So Provo High is right here, I-15, Geneva Road, Lakeview Elementary. So 1390 North is where this project is. So this is, I think, a main road for people getting to the high school, one of the main accesses, and the elementary school. So this project is actually a really short one. It's just between Geneva and right here. So I know it looks like bike lanes start here. So I assume the goal of this project is just to probably restripe to add bike lanes here or something to that effect. Shane or Robert or anyone chime in if you know better than me, but that's what I'm gathering, at least from what I'm seeing. So anyway, for this project, we'll want to, what do we think in terms of ranking these?
It may be, and like I said, when we started this when we did the master plan and we did all this, it started over 2 years ago. And so, it took us a while to get that through all the processes, like I said, through various committees, through the city council, all those things. This may be because we did recently repave this road. We've restriped this road and have, as part of that was before, just, right around the high school, we did work with the elementary school on the safe routes to school. When we probably did this and they did the research, I think this was probably not in there, and we have probably already completed this. We've added all those features.
So this one might be done.
Yes.
Oh. Good job, everybody.
Yay!
Project finished.
Yes, and these are the things that, like I said, and we do these continuously with our road rehabilitation project. Yeah, when we, and that's why we try to tie those together a lot with projects that we have, our road rehab. We start looking at these specific projects and see what we can do to complete them as part of those. So I believe that one's already done, and that will 2770 West. That would get you out to Lakeview Parkway, which we're working with Ivory to construct right now through their phase 5 and 6 of Ivory out by Lakeview to start getting those portions of Lakeview Parkway built. So they already have that road at 1390 all the way built already out to Lakeview Parkway. We're going to be building that road north of the school. Yep. That'll connect you up right there across, and we'll be building that road up north to there. So that's going on right now.
Okay.
Where do the bikes go once they hit Geneva? Because there's no.
That's part of the issue, and that's part of the state, right? That is going to need to be worked out with the state when they redo Geneva Road.
Oh.
That is on their phase. That is on phase 1 of the MAG plan, and I know it's on UDOT's higher priority US list. They're showing that as a 3-lane road all the way through Provo from roughly 2000 North all the way down to Center Street. And as part of their there's an environmental document that I believe was completed in 2007 or 8 or those that show bike facilities and also a 10-foot or a multi-use path on one side of the street. I can't remember which side that was on. I believe it's on the west. That goes all the way through there. So the state has that on their
and
planning system.
And it's also on our 2B active trans project list, so it's covered in both places. So
yep. So that would be coordination with the state when they start reconstructing or widening all of Geneva Road.
Okay. Well, that's good. So let's jump on to the next one. 2230 North University Avenue to Parkway Trail. So I think, wait, let me get my bearings. Okay. So I think this is probably, wait, was that University Avenue? Yeah. Probably connecting the river trail here where it ends over to.
So I can talk about this. I can talk about this one too, Clancy.
Okay.
So back in 2014, back when with Mayor Curtis, one of the concerns was, yes, 2230 North, we have the trail system that runs along University Avenue, roughly. If you get up there, I think it's 3,700 north-ish, all the way down to here to 2230 North. A lot of that trail is adjacent to the road. It doesn't have a good, park strip or separation, but there's also a portion of that, here on the park or the avenue that's only a 6-foot sidewalk all along there. Yeah. And then also along 2230 North, it's a narrow sidewalk. It's identified as part of the trail system that gets you over to the Provo River Park, the Provo River Trail, right there, 300 West. You can kind of see where the power station is. There's a bridge there that needs to
bridge here.
Yep, that needs to be reconstructed. So initially, through MAG, we had this project funded. There was about $3 million that was designated back then to do this project. What ended up happening is Bulldog Boulevard, the bike boulevard for now Cougar Boulevard, became a higher priority. And so we had MAG funding for that project, but what we ended up doing is switching the years on those projects so that we pushed the Cougar Boulevard project as a higher priority. And then what happened is the funding for this specific project got delayed until now. So funding has just become available for this specific project to complete this work and to get that completed. Right now, that is in the Parks Department is taking the lead on that project. And so they're moving forward on getting that in place, getting, a consultant on board, and starting that process of getting, the planning on what needs to be there and why, that system through there. So that one is moving forward as we speak.
Very cool. We're 2 for 2, guys. Look at this.
Can I just say I tried to bike that section with my family a few weeks ago, and that was by far the most dangerous section, trying to connect those better bike paths. So that's great, Shane. That's really good news.
And we knew that, and it's been brought up in the past, and that is what this is for, because that is one of the major trails systems that gets used. And so we've been aware for a while, and it's funded. So just so you know, we're moving forward with that.
Yeah, I've had the same experience many times, Joy. It's a nice ride, and then you have to get on that sidewalk, and
it's scary with your little kids if they, yeah.
That's great. All right, 3,700 North, 50 West to 100 East. 3,700 North. Oh yeah, this is another one where it's a small little pinch point. So from here to here, I've ridden this before many times on my bike. There's a pretty comfortable shoulder or bike lane up until this point, and I think after this point, it looks like. And so I imagine the intent of this project would be fixing this this barrier where it's pretty uncomfortable as a bicyclist, and even pedestrian probably to get from here to there. I don't know, anyone else, any thoughts on this or background? Nope. Okay. So if let's try and get through this one and maybe one more if we can, just so we can try out our plan here. If we were going to rank this on a 0 to 3, and we may adjust the rating scale as well, where 0 would be no impact, 1 minor positive impact, 2 positive, 3 significant positive impact. How do you all think we would rank it for these categories? So let's start with active transportation mobility. What do y'all think we would want to score this possibly? And this is not the official scoring. We're trying it out right now to learn. So,
see, this is Jim.
Yeah.
I live about a half block away from this site, and it's an issue of considerable consternation to neighbors and people who use the gas station on 3700 North Will's pit stop there. There are frequent accidents. There are frequent bicyclists who are trying to cross in this area and nearly get hit.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that I would put this in a 3 category. I mean, maybe that's because I live in the area and know quite a bit about what the feelings are in the neighborhood about this problem.
That's great. That's
my challenge, Clancy, is getting calibrated. So like number 4, row 4, it seems like the usage of the Provo River Parkway Trail, the usage is really high.
Mm-hmm.
And it's kind of a safety concern. So if that's a significant positive, is 5 a positive impact or is it a significant positive? I'm having a hard time getting calibrated.
Yeah, and I think that's what we'll do through this, because you're right, Dave. Calibrating is important. And I would maybe say, maybe for safety, this one might be a 3, because, in my opinion, riding through here, it's terrifying, even if you're on the sidewalk. And being afraid often as an active transportation user correlates to safety. So I would maybe lean towards maybe a 2 here, because I think Jim's right. It is a major issue, and maybe a 3 here. Because I think, to your point, Dave, this one probably would be a 3 where it's used more heavily.
Yeah, I was going to say, does volume affect mobility? Definitely, but does volume affect the level of impact that we're talking about?
Well, like on number 4 there, it's used by a wider variety of riders. Like Joy, you mentioned that you took your family on it. That's the way the Provo River is trail. Whereas I imagine this number 5 is used by commuters or people trying to get somewhere on their bike. It won't be the same. Joy would never take her kids down that road, right?
No.
probably even when it's fixed. So that's the other thing I'm having. So who's our audience? Like is active transport? Yeah, because I think a biker using it for commuting versus a family or individuals using it for enjoyment is a very different use, and the skill level is very different.
Jim, do you see a lot of bikers right there, or is it a few bikers? I mean, what's the volume like at that, or pedestrians?
I bike that trail all the time, and I do think there is a significant ridership across that intersection.
Yeah, that if we look at this as a way to access the trail, I mean,
yeah,
possibly anyone in these neighborhoods
they're
using
that
through this connection to get to the trail. So in that way, it's probably not much different than this. Yeah. Is that kind of what you're saying, Jim, I think?
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm saying.
Yeah.
It's also an intersection of 2 major roads, right?
Exactly. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And there's another issue that may not be part of this, the scope of this, but if you look at North 50 West, there's significant traffic that blocks the northbound traffic that stops there because they have accessed the commercial or office space, Jamestown office space to the south. And what you cannot see in this necessarily is that there's a high power electric line that runs down that area, and there's a post that obscures the view. Thank you. So as you are making a left-hand turn, you would see this post that that obscures one's view, and consequently, people are inching out. Their cars are inching out, hoping not to get hit by the eastbound traffic off of 3700 North. My wife just refuses to approach this intersection in a car, and I know others.
Yeah, it's dangerous in a car right there too.
Yeah,
and this access also introduces a lot of friction. People coming and going from there, so close to an actual intersection.
Right.
Yeah, I don't know. Talking that over more.
Yeah,
we'll calibrate as we go. I'd be comfortable giving it a 3. Yeah. So this next category, I know we talked about before. We're not sure if B and D really are different or if they're essentially the same thing. We talked about mobility versus connectivity. I think connectivity might be different when we're talking about a brand new facility or something like this. I mean, it's connected. It's not easy or safe, but it is connected. So I'm still not sure if these should be separate categories or not. I don't know. Any thoughts?
Dr. Saito, didn't you have thoughts on that last time? Still here. I thought we talked about how, in the case of the intersection we were just discussing, we need for bikes and pedestrians to be able to get through safely. Whereas with the line 4, where you're actually connecting to parkway or to designated bike trails, that might rank a special number in connectivity.
Mitsu, you're on mute. You have to unmute. I see your lips moving, but I hear no sound.
All right,
there we
I'm
go.
muted.
Right.
I think the column B active transportation mobility is that, if you think about, let's say, bicyclist and bike lane and bike route, whatever, and that's connectivity itself. Whereas the column D connectivity includes connection from pedestrian, walking to bike, or bike to some modal change. So connectivity has that portion. When we discussed before, I think the active transportation mobility is, if you think about the bicyclist, then for bicyclist, what kind of connection you have? How can you move in that bike route? So if you, in this case, you have Provo River Park, is that Parkway? Where you can ride bicycle. So in this case, you come down here along University Parkway, and you have a Provo River Parkway going down south, and this is east-west. Let's say if you live on the west side of the University Avenue, you come in on the bike, and then go to this north-south parkway along University. So that's the mobility for bicyclists. And so, in this case, as I see it, there's only this narrow sidewalk there. So for bicyclists, this may be a kind of dangerous transition from University Parkway I mean, the bike route along the University Avenue and to your neighborhood. So, yeah, it looks dangerous because there are so many vehicles here, high volume.
So
yeah, connectivity has extra thing in there when we talked about, you know, the one model change also. So in this case, connectivity wise, if it's a model change, this particular wheels pit area doesn't have, unless you come bicycle and then change to bus, for example.
Mm-hmm. So would we, for this one particular, would we say maybe no impact then, since it's connecting
in
new
terms
modes?
of connecting to different mode, maybe no impact.
Okay.
Yeah.
So is that how we're defining connectivity, is opportunities for switching modes?
Yeah, when we talked about, I think the connectivity according to the notes from Clancy, it's external connection to other communities. A, within the system, B, modal connectivity.
Okay. So let's work with that definition and see where it takes us. Let's talk about these last few quickly, and then we'll wrap up for today. So community impact, economic impact, and then vehicle mobility. I'll go ahead here and say I think this would also have some positive impact to vehicle mobility, just if it was able to address some of the universal issues here. So I mean I'd be comfortable giving that a 1 possibly, or
yeah, it cannot be 0 impact. So.
Yeah, because I think it could help vehicle travel as well. I don't know, any alternative thoughts there?
I would be comfortable with either a 1 or a 2 there. Yeah.
Okay.
But the 1's fine.
Community and economic.
It's a so short, and it's a short section. So I'm not sure about economic.
Yeah, it's not. I don't know that it really.
Yeah, from there to the 100 East. So mostly mobility for bicyclists.
Uh-huh.
Do we have a safety category? Because
safety.
it would score high in safety. Yeah. Oh, we did. Okay.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, if you could have a separate bike path, then that'd be nice.
Uh-huh.
It's a good transition from University Avenue to other streets.
And then community?
Community impact, recreation, quality of life in Kuwait.
Jim, what do you think? It's your community.
Yeah, I'm curious what Jim thinks on community and economic.
On community, I would say 2.
2.
Because there's positive impact for all who are driving, walking.
Yeah, that's true. Okay.
And are bicycling. In terms of economic impact, I'd have to say a minor.
Very much.
I mean, because it's more lifestyle than it is affecting a business. The only business there is going to be a Will's Pit Stop.
Will's Pit Stop, yeah.
So maybe even a 0 or a 1 on economic.
Yeah, I would say almost 0. Next one.
Do we? It's 2:00. Do we want to hurry and do one more for the sake of the conversation, or should we?
700 East.
I have to go, Clancy, but you guys are welcome to continue if you need to.
Let's call it. We try to.
Yeah, we can continue next time.
That was really helpful.
We have better idea. Yeah, if you could send this Excel file to us, then we can think about it before the next meeting.
Yeah, I'll send references to what we're looking at.
That'd be good
for you all. That was good. Well, thanks everybody. So we'll continue that discussion next meeting. Anything else we need to discuss before we close the meeting, Robert?
Just if there's anything in particular that you would like to have on your agenda for next meeting. Otherwise, we can add things as they come up over the month. But if anybody has anything now, we can note that.
Just this prioritization stuff for me that I'm aware of.
I have one question. This is not the item, but when will the 500 West construction will be over?
Never.
2025, I think.
Oh, 2025. Okay.
That's a great way to manage expectations.
Yeah, so I'll tell you, we have a monthly meeting that we meet with UDOT, the region director, and a few of their personnel. What the plan is they anticipate having the major components of 500 West completed this year. So meaning opened up the facilities, vehicles, those kind of things, site concrete work, those kind of things completed this year. So usability, it should be what they're telling us completed this year. But the others, things that may hang out till the next construction season, landscaping, the final touch-up items won't not be completed this year, but will be into next year. So right now we've been told they're going to have the major items completed. The one things that we really feel are very impactful will be completed, but the complete project will be done next year.
All right, thank you.
Cool.
Robert, can we also get a link to that digital open house that Parametrics is showing us today with those things?
Yeah, I just requested that from Vern. So
okay, perfect. Thank you.
Once I get that, I'll send it out to all of you.
Thank you.
All right. I think
okay.
Looks like that's it then. So thanks everybody. We'll go ahead and adjourn the meeting. And enjoy your day. We'll see you.
Thank you,
Thanks.
Thank you.